Racism often thrives behind titles, policies, and polished suits, but at Bennett Industries, it made the mistake of showing its face. During a late shift in the marble lobby, a powerful white CEO publicly humiliated 72-year-old black janitor Marjorie Williams, calling her worthless in front of silent onlookers. To him, she was just another invisible worker, too old, too poor, too small to fight back. He didn't know Marjorie had spent decades watching men like him rise and fall. One phone call later, he was fired from his own company. And the reckoning was only just beginning. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The marble floors of Bennett Industries gleamed under the evening lights, reflecting like mirrors beneath Marjorie Williams's well-worn mop. Her weathered hands moved in practiced motions, decades of experience guiding each stroke. The lobby was nearly empty, save for a few late-working employees hurrying past with their heads down, briefcases clutched tight. The sound of raised voices drew her attention to the glass-walled conference room. Through the partially closed blinds, she could make out Arthur Bennett's tall figure, his expensive suit, a dark silhouette against the city lights beyond. He was gesturing angrily at someone Marjorie couldn't quite see. "Keep your voice down," the other man hissed, just loud enough for Marjorie to hear through the door left slightly ajar. A briefcase changed hands, and Arthur's face twisted with rage. Marjorie's heart began to race. She shouldn't be here, shouldn't be seeing this. Trying to appear busy, she guided her mop closer to the water fountain, keeping her eyes down but her ears open. "You think you can threaten me?" Arthur's voice carried despite his attempt to whisper. "I built this company. I own this company. You're nothing but a—" The conference room door suddenly swung wide. Marjorie startled, her elbow catching the paper coffee cup perched on the fountain's edge. She watched in horror as the dark liquid arced through the air, landing with a splash across Arthur Bennett's crisp white shirt and navy suit jacket. The lobby fell deadly silent. Arthur looked down at his ruined clothes, then slowly raised his eyes to Marjorie. His face, usually composed for the cameras and board meetings, contorted with undisguised hatred. "You stupid old woman," he snarled, taking a step toward her. "Look what you've done!" Marjorie clutched her mop handle tighter. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Bennett. It was an accident. I'll pay for the cleaning." "Pay?" Arthur barked out a laugh that made her flinch. "With what? Your minimum wage pennies?" He turned to the small crowd of employees that had gathered, playing to his audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, witness the quality of help we're forced to employ these days. A relic mopping floors with a slave's hands. Too dim to even do that right." Marjorie's cheeks burned. She'd faced racism before. Subtle looks, whispered words, doors closed in her face, but never this raw, public hatred. The other employees stood frozen, some looking away in shame, others staring at their phones, no one speaking up. "Mr. Bennett," she began, struggling to keep her voice steady, "I've worked here for 15 years. 15 years too long," he cut her off. 15 years of affirmative action charity cases cluttering up my building. Well, I've had enough. Security. He snapped his fingers at the guard station. "That won't be necessary," a quiet voice interrupted. The man who'd been arguing with Arthur stepped forward. He was shorter than Arthur, with graying temples and kind eyes that held a hint of steel. "Ms. Williams was simply doing her job. The spill was my fault. I bumped into her." Arthur's jaw clenched. "Samuel, stay out of this. The company's insurance will cover the cleaning bill," Samuel continued, as if Arthur hadn't spoken. "Ms. Williams, please, carry on with your work. Mr. Bennett and I have matters to discuss." Marjorie nodded gratefully, her hands trembling as she gripped her mop. As she turned away, She felt something press into her palm, a folded slip of paper. Samuel had passed it to her so smoothly, she'd barely noticed. "This isn't over," she heard Arthur growl behind her as she wheeled her cart toward the service elevator. "Nothing is over until I say it's over." The ride home on the bus was a blur. Marjorie's mind kept replaying Arthur's words, his twisted face, the shame of standing there while others watched her humiliation. But beneath the hurt, something else gnawed at her. The memory of that heated exchange, the briefcase, Samuel's warning note burning a hole in her pocket. Her small apartment was dark and quiet when she arrived. She hung up her coat with shaking hands, then retrieved her mother's Bible from the bedside table. The leather was worn smooth from years of daily reading, the pages marked with post-it notes and underlined verses. Marjorie opened it to Psalms, her favorite book, and carefully tucked the folded note between its pages. "Be careful," he'd written. Such simple words, but they carried the weight of something dangerous, something that made her chest tight with fear. She sank into her armchair, the Bible clutched to her chest, and let the tears she'd been holding back finally fall. The apartment's silence pressed in around her, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and her own ragged breathing. Marjorie's hands shook as she dialed Michael's number. The digital clock on her microwave blinked 9:47 p.m., and she hated bothering him so late. But this couldn't wait until morning. "Mama?" Michael's voice was instantly alert. He could always tell when something was wrong. "What happened?" "I'm okay, baby," she said, though her voice cracked on the words. "But something happened at work tonight. Something bad." She heard rustling on his end, then the soft click of a door closing. "Tell me everything." Marjorie sank deeper into her worn armchair, clutching the phone tight. "It's about Arthur Bennett, the CEO. I was cleaning the lobby when I overheard him arguing with someone in the conference room. They were exchanging a briefcase, and Bennett was so angry." She told him about the spilled coffee, her voice trembling as she recounted Bennett's cruel words. "He called me a relic, Michael. Said I had slaves' hands. In front of everyone. That racist son of a—" Michael took a deep breath, and she could picture him pacing his office, running a hand over his close-cropped hair, the way he did when he was angry. "Did anyone stand up for you?" "The man Bennett was arguing with, Samuel Green, I think that's his name. He tried to diffuse things." Marjorie reached for her Bible, running her fingers along its worn edges. "But there's more. Before I left, he slipped me a note." "What did it say?" She opened the Bible to where she'd hidden the paper. "You didn't see anything. Be careful." "Michael, I'm scared. The way they were arguing, the briefcase. Something's not right." "No, it's not." His voice had shifted from angry son to focused advocate. "Mama, this is exactly the kind of thing Victoria Hart needs to hear about. She's the board chairwoman at Bennett Industries, and she's been trying to clean up that company for years. I don't want to cause trouble. You're not causing anything. Bennett caused this by being a racist bully, and whatever he's mixed up in, he brought that on himself, too." She heard him typing rapidly. "I'm sending Victoria an email right now. She needs to know about both the public harassment and what you witnessed." Marjorie wrapped her free arm around herself, glancing at the window where city lights twinkled beyond the curtains. "What if he retaliates? I need this job, Michael. He can't touch you, Mama. Not legally, not with witnesses to his behavior. And Victoria, she's different. She actually cares about doing what's right." More typing, then a pause. "There. Email sent." Almost immediately, Michael's phone buzzed. "Hold on, Mama. Victoria's calling me back already." Marjorie listened to her son's side of the conversation, catching phrases like hostile work environment and pattern of behavior. Her small living room felt too quiet, too exposed. She got up to double-check the door locks. "Yes, ma'am," Michael was saying. "My mother can provide a written statement." "No, I understand the sensitivity." "Of course, first thing tomorrow." When he returned to their call, his voice was lighter. "Victoria's taking this very seriously. Apparently, there have been some financial irregularities they've been investigating. She says Bennett's public outburst gives her the leverage she needs to act now." "What does that mean?" "It means, Mama, that man picked the wrong person to humiliate. Victoria's calling an emergency board meeting before sunrise. She's going to suspend Bennett pending a full investigation." Marjorie sank onto her couch, legs weak with relief. "Just like that? Just like that?" Victoria said his behavior tonight was the final straw in a pattern of increasingly erratic conduct. "She's been building a case, and this pushes it over the edge." He paused. "Are you okay, Mama? Really okay?" She thought about it, examining the knot of emotions in her chest. "I'm tired, baby. Tired of being treated like I'm nothing just because I clean floors for a living. Tired of having to swallow my pride and stay quiet." "I know, Mama, but you're not nothing. You're everything to me, and you matter to this case. Your courage in speaking up, that's going to help take down a man who's hurt a lot of people." Tears welled in Marjorie's eyes. "You sound just like your father when you talk like that. He never could stand to see injustice either." "I learned from the best. Both of you." Michael's voice softened. "Try to get some sleep, okay? I'll call you as soon as I hear anything from Victoria." "You sleep too," she said, falling into familiar maternal patterns despite everything. "Don't stay up all night working on this." "Too late, Mama. Justice doesn't sleep, remember?" After they hung up, Marjorie sat in the quiet apartment, letting the events of the night wash over her. The shame of Bennett's words still stung, but it was dulled now by something else. A spark of defiance, of righteousness. She might be a janitor, but she had raised a warrior for justice. And maybe, just maybe, she was stronger than she'd thought too. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Victoria's got the board members on conference calls already. Change is coming, Mama." "Sleep well." Marjorie hugged her Bible close, whispering a prayer of thanks and protection. Outside her window, the city's lights continued to twinkle, and somewhere in a luxurious office, Victoria Hart was preparing to shake Bennett Industries to its core. The boardroom on the top floor of Bennett Industries gleamed in pre-dawn darkness, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the city's scattered lights. Victoria Hart stood at the head of the mahogany table, her silver hair neat despite the early hour, her navy suit crisp and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," she began, her voice steady as she faced the 12 members seated before her. "I've called this emergency meeting to address a crisis that can no longer be ignored." She pressed a button on her tablet, and the room's screens lit up with security footage from the lobby. The board members watched in silence as Arthur Bennett's tirade played out in high definition, his twisted face, his jabbing finger, his cruel words echoing through the room's premium speakers. "A relic mopping floors with slaves' hands," Victoria quoted, letting the words hang heavy in the air. "This incident occurred less than 6 hours ago. The victim is Marjorie Williams, a 72-year-old employee who has served this company faithfully for 15 years. Charles Peterson, the oldest board member, removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Good God! This is not an isolated incident, Victoria continued, switching to a new screen filled with HR complaints. Over the past 3 years, we've documented 37 instances of Mr. Bennett's discriminatory behavior, 15 racial harassment claims, 22 cases of age discrimination, all settled quietly, all buried under NDAs. She clicked through photographs, tearful employees, angry resignation letters, legal documents marked confidential. We've been protecting him, and in doing so, we've become complicit. But the company's performance, started Robert Chen, one of Arthur's longtime allies. Is a house of cards, Victoria cut in, nodding to James Foster, head of internal audit. James, please share what your team discovered during the preliminary investigation I ordered last month. James stood, his face grim, as he distributed thick folders to each board member. What you're looking at is evidence of systematic financial fraud. We've uncovered a network of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in Panama, and a complex web of stock manipulation schemes. The boardroom erupted in whispers as members flipped through the documents. Victoria let them absorb the information, watching their faces shift from shock to anger to fear. The SEC would have a field day with this, muttered Patricia Wong, head of the audit committee. These transactions alone could trigger a federal investigation. And that's before we factor in the discriminatory practices, added James. The pattern of settling harassment claims through these hidden accounts suggests a deliberate attempt to conceal systemic abuse. Victoria moved to the windows, gazing at the lightening sky. Dawn is breaking, and with it, we face a choice. We can continue enabling Arthur Bennett's behavior until it destroys this company. Or we can act now. She turned back to the board, her expression resolute. I move for immediate termination of Arthur Bennett as CEO, effective immediately, on grounds of gross misconduct, abuse of power, and financial breach of trust. The room fell silent. Robert Chen shifted uncomfortably. Shouldn't we at least give him a chance to explain? The evidence speaks for itself, Patricia Wong countered, tapping the folder before her. We have a fiduciary duty to protect this company. I second the motion. All in favor? Victoria asked, her voice clear and firm. Hands rose around the table one by one. Even Robert Chen, after a moment's hesitation, raised his. The vote is unanimous, Victoria announced. Security is already on standby. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Send them in. The boardroom doors opened, and 2 security officers entered, followed by Arthur Bennett himself. He wore the same expensive suit from the night before, though now it bore a coffee stain on the sleeve. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, his face reddening as he saw the footage still frozen on the screens. His own face contorted with rage as he berated Marjorie. Victoria's voice was steel. Arthur Bennett, you are hereby terminated from your position as CEO of Bennett Industries, effective immediately. These officers will escort you from the building. You can't do this, he sputtered, looking around the table for support and finding none. This is my company. Not anymore, Victoria replied. Your access has been revoked. Your accounts frozen. Your office will be packed up and its contents delivered to your home. The security officers moved forward, flanking Arthur. He shrugged them off violently. You'll regret this, Victoria. All of you will regret this. Take him out, Victoria ordered. They watched through the glass walls as Arthur was led to the elevator, his protests echoing down the corridor. Victoria waited until he was gone, before addressing the board again. I'll handle the press conference at 8. We need to get ahead of this story. 2 hours later, Arthur sat in his penthouse suite, watching Victoria on every news channel. Her composed figure stood at a podium in the Bennett Industries lobby, delivering the carefully worded statement. Due to evidence of gross misconduct, abuse of power, and financial breach of trust, the board has terminated Arthur Bennett's position as CEO, effective immediately. Arthur hurled his crystal tumbler at the television, sending bourbon and glass shards flying. His hands clenched into fists as he stared at Victoria's image, at the reporters scribbling furiously in their notebooks, at the scrolling headlines announcing his downfall. The morning sun streamed through his floor-to-ceiling windows, but Arthur saw only darkness. His face, usually so carefully controlled, twisted with the same ugly rage he'd shown Marjorie Williams the night before. But now, that rage had a new target: the board, Victoria, and everyone who had dared to strip him of his power. Marjorie's key scraped in the lock of her modest apartment door. The day's events had left her exhausted, but thankful. She'd stayed away most of the day, not wanting to face the whispers and stares at work after the morning's news about Arthur's firing had spread. Something felt wrong the moment she pushed the door open. The air smelled different, like someone else's cologne lingering in her space. Her hand trembled against the light switch. The living room looked normal at first glance. Her worn but clean furniture sat exactly where it should. The framed photos of Michael graduating law school still hung on the walls. But then she noticed the Bible on her side table. It was slightly askew, not how she'd left it. Her heart pounding, Marjorie moved carefully through her home. In the kitchen, cabinet doors stood slightly ajar. The bedroom dresser drawers weren't fully closed. Someone had been through everything. When she reached her closet, she found the door wide open. Her cleaning uniform, normally hanging pressed and ready for work, was gone. The plastic ID badge that usually sat on her nightstand had vanished too. "Dear Lord," she whispered, her hands shaking as she reached for her phone. She pressed Michael's number with trembling fingers. "Mama?" Michael answered on the first ring. "Everything okay?" "Someone's been in my apartment," she said, her voice barely steady. "They took my work clothes and ID. I'm coming right now. Don't touch anything else. Call 911. Marjorie sank into her favorite armchair while she waited, trying not to look at the subtle signs of invasion around her. Her Bible caught her eye again. The note, Samuel's warning, had been tucked inside its pages. With sudden clarity, she opened the Bible to where she'd hidden it. The page lay flat, empty. The note was gone. 15 minutes later, Michael burst through the door, still in his suit from a day of meetings. 2 police officers followed close behind. "Mama!" He rushed to her side, checking her over. "Are you hurt? Did you see anyone?" She shook her head. "I just got home. But they've been through everything." The officers began their sweep, taking photos and notes. Officer Chen, a young Asian woman, crouched beside Marjorie's chair. "Can you tell me what's missing, ma'am?" "My work uniform from Bennett Industries. My employee ID badge." Marjorie hesitated, then added, "And a note that was given to me last night." Michael's head snapped up. "The note from that man? The one who was with Bennett?" Marjorie nodded. Officer Chen wrote quickly in her notepad. "What did this note say?" "You didn't see anything." "Be careful," Marjorie quoted. The second officer, Rodriguez, rejoined them from checking the windows. No signs of forced entry. They either had a key or knew how to pick a lock professionally. "This wasn't a regular break-in," Michael said, his jaw tight. "Nothing valuable was taken. No electronics, no jewelry. This is intimidation, plain and simple. Given the situation with Bennett Industries today, we'll definitely look into that angle," Officer Chen assured them. "We'll increase patrols in the area." "I'm installing a security system tonight," Michael declared. "And Mama? You're staying with me until we figure this out." "I can't leave my home," Marjorie protested. "I won't let them scare me away." "Then I'm staying here," Michael countered. "At least for a few days." The officers finished their report and left, promising to follow up. Michael immediately made calls, first to a security company, then to his private investigator contact. "Listen, Marcus," he said into the phone, pacing the small living room. "I need everything you can find on Arthur Bennett's movements today. Who he contacted, where he went, and I need to know if he's got any connections to private security firms." Across town, in a sleek downtown office, Arthur sat across from 2 men in expensive suits. Their business cards on the desk read, "Precision Risk Management." "I want everything," Arthur was saying, his manicured fingers drumming on the desk. "Every skeleton in Michael Williams's closet. Every penny his foundation has spent. Every person he's ever helped or hurt. And I want dirt on the mother, too." "Our usual rates," one of the men began. Arthur cut him off. "Money is no object. But I want results fast. And if you can't find anything—" He smiled coldly. "Then get creative." Back in Marjorie's apartment, Michael watched as the security technicians finished installing sensors on the windows. They'd already put in cameras, motion detectors, and a state-of-the-art alarm system. Marjorie knelt beside her bed, her Bible open before her, though the missing note still troubled her. Her soft voice carried the Lord's Prayer into the quiet room. "Our Father, who art in heaven." Michael stood in the doorway, his phone still buzzing with messages, watching his mother pray. He'd seen that same quiet strength his whole life, through poverty, through racism, through every challenge they'd faced. But this time felt different. This time, the enemy had a face and unlimited resources. He moved to the security panel, making sure every sensor showed green. Every camera was active. The system was armed, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that they were facing something no alarm could warn them about. "Amen," Marjorie finished, closing her Bible gently. The morning sun cast long shadows through the glass walls of Justice Forward Foundation's headquarters. Michael sat at his desk, surrounded by newspaper clippings about Arthur Bennett's firing. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Reporters wanting statements, activists seeking guidance, and concerned community members sharing support. Paul Donovan's weathered face appeared in Michael's doorway. The former federal investigator looked out of place in the modern office, his worn leather jacket and lined face contrasting with the sleek furniture and tech displays. "Thanks for coming on such short notice," Michael said, standing to shake his hand. "Your message mentioned Bennett Industries." Paul's voice was gravelly, tired. "That's a rabbit hole I've been down before." Michael gestured to a chair. "What do you mean?" 10 years ago, I was working a federal corruption case. The trail led straight to Bennett's door." Paul settled into the chair with a grunt. "But witnesses disappeared. Evidence vanished. The whole thing got buried so deep, you'd need a mining permit to find it." Michael spread photos across his desk. Arthur's public appearances, charity events, political fundraisers. He's built this image of a philanthropic business leader. But last night, someone broke into my mother's apartment. They took specific items: her work uniform, ID, a note that could have implicated Bennett in something illegal. "Professional job?" Paul asked, leaning forward. "No forced entry. Nothing else touched." Paul nodded slowly. "That's their style. Clean, targeted, makes it look random, but sends a message." Across town, in a private dining room at the exclusive Monarch Club, Arthur Bennett sat at the head of a mahogany table. 5 men in expensive suits listened intently as he spoke. "Gentlemen, I've been the victim of a coordinated attack," Arthur said, swirling his scotch. "This Williams character and his mother are part of a larger scheme to destabilize successful businesses under the guise of social justice." One man, Senator Thompson, cleared his throat. "The optics are difficult, Arthur. An elderly black janitor publicly humiliated. A carefully orchestrated scene," Arthur cut in smoothly. "My sources tell me Williams has been planning this for months. His foundation is a front for corporate espionage, using minorities as pawns to target legitimate businesses." Another man, Judge Harrison, raised an eyebrow. "You have proof?" Arthur smiled thinly. "It's being arranged as we speak. By this time next week, the media will have a very different story to tell." Back at the foundation, Paul scrolled through financial records on his laptop. Bennett's official holdings are just the surface. There's a network of shell companies, offshore accounts, political contributions through third parties. Can we prove any of it? Michael asked. Not yet, but look at this. Paul turned the screen. Every major investigation into Bennett Industries in the past 15 years has been shut down. The investigators either got promoted to cushy jobs elsewhere or suffered convenient scandals. Michael's phone buzzed. A news alert showed a fresh headline. Questions arise about Justice Forward Foundation's financial practices. It's starting, Michael muttered, showing Paul the screen. He's moving fast, Paul agreed. Classic misdirection. While everyone's focused on defending your reputation, his people will be destroying evidence and silencing witnesses. My mother, already on it. Paul held up his phone. I've got 2 former colleagues watching her apartment, ex-federal agents I trust completely. Michael's assistant knocked and entered, carrying a stack of papers. Sir, we're getting calls from donors. Someone's spreading rumors about misused funds and secret payments. Bennett's first move, Paul said, after the assistant left. Attacking your funding sources. Next will come personal attacks, probably manufactured evidence of wrongdoing. How do we fight this? Paul leaned back, his face grim. In my 20 years investigating corruption, I've never seen anything like Bennett's operation. It's not just a company. It's an organized criminal enterprise disguised as a legitimate business empire. They've got judges, politicians, media executives all in their pocket. So, what's our move? We need to… Paul stopped as Michael's phone rang again. It was Marjorie. Michael, there are reporters outside my building. They're asking about money laundering through the church's cleaning service. Michael's jaw tightened. Don't talk to them, Mama. Don't open the door for anyone except me or the security team. After hanging up, Michael turned to Paul. They're going after my mother's reputation now. They'll try to break both of you, Paul said. Make you look like criminals, con artists. By the time they're done, the original incident will be buried under a mountain of false accusations. Michael stood, staring out at the city skyline. How deep does this go? Paul's reflection appeared beside his in the window. Based on what I'm seeing already, we're not just dealing with a corrupt CEO. This is a corporate crime syndicate that spent decades building a facade of legitimacy. And they'll do anything to keep that facade from cracking. The night air was cold as Marjorie Williams stood in the shadows of Bennett Industries' service entrance. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from anger. After 15 years of cleaning these halls, she knew every corner, every security camera blind spot, and most importantly, which guards were still loyal to Arthur Bennett. She waited until Tommy, the night guard who always dozed off around midnight, started his usual nap in the security booth. The service door's lock clicked softly as she used her spare key, the one she'd kept at home, thankfully not stolen during the break-in. The familiar smell of industrial cleaner filled her nostrils as she crept through the dark hallways. Her soft-soled shoes, worn from years of quiet work, made no sound on the polished floors. The janitorial office was at the end of the basement corridor, tucked away like the workers themselves. Out of sight, out of mind. Voices drifted from behind the partially closed door. Marjorie pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. She recognized Brad Thompson's voice, Arthur's head of security, and Maria Valdez, the human resources director who'd always sided with management over workers. The ID card and uniform are perfect, Brad was saying. We'll have someone plant confidential documents in her locker, then discover them during a routine security sweep. What about the security cameras? Maria asked. Already handled. We'll edit the footage to show her accessing restricted areas after hours. With her stolen uniform and ID, no one will question it. Marjorie's fingers shook as she pulled out her phone. Michael had insisted she carry one with a recording app after the break-in. She pressed record, holding the device close to the gap in the door. Bennett wants this airtight, Brad continued. Once we plant the evidence, Will Anonymous tip the FBI about corporate espionage? They'll find classified documents in her possession, proof she's been selling company secrets to competitors. And her son's foundation? That's phase 2. The documents will implicate his organization in a money laundering scheme. Bennett's got friends at the IRS ready to launch an audit. Marjorie's jaw clenched. They weren't just coming after her. They wanted to destroy everything Michael had built. What about the old lady herself? Maria's voice had an edge of concern. This seems extreme. Brad laughed harshly. Bennett says she needs to learn her place. Nobody crosses him and walks away clean. Besides, who's going to believe some ancient janitor over a respected businessman? A door slammed somewhere down the hall. Marjorie froze as footsteps approached. "Security sweep!" a voice called out. Marjorie's mind raced. The storage closet, her sanctuary during countless late shifts, was 3 steps away. She slipped inside just as flashlight beams swept the corridor. The closet was tiny, cramped with shelves of cleaning supplies. Marjorie held her breath as the footsteps passed. The chemical smell of bleach and ammonia was overwhelming in the confined space. "Check the janitorial office," someone called. More footsteps. Doors opening and closing. Marjorie's legs ached from standing still, but she didn't dare move. "All clear down here," the voice eventually reported. Minutes passed like hours before silence returned to the hallway. Marjorie waited 5 more minutes, counting seconds like she'd taught her Sunday school kids to do during hide-and-seek. When she finally eased the closet door open, the corridor was empty. Her phone showed the recording had captured everything. Hands steady now, she typed a message to Michael. "Got proof. They're planning to frame us both. Ready to fight back. No more hiding." As she crept back toward the service entrance, Marjorie thought about all the years she'd spent in these halls. All the times she'd lowered her eyes, swallowed her pride, stayed quiet in the face of disrespect. Not anymore. Tommy was still snoring in his booth as she slipped out into the night. The stars were bright overhead, and for the first time since the coffee spill incident, Marjorie felt truly powerful. They thought she was just some helpless old janitor. They were about to learn how wrong they were. She walked to the bus stop with her head high, phone clutched tight against her chest. The recording would expose their plans, but more importantly, it proved what she'd known all along. Arthur Bennett was afraid of her. Not because she was young or rich or powerful, but because she had something he could never buy or steal: the truth. The night bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. As Marjorie climbed aboard, she thought about Michael's face when he'd hear the recording. Her son had spent his life fighting for justice. Now it was her turn to join that fight. She found a seat near the back, away from other passengers. Her phone buzzed with Michael's reply. "Proud of you, Mama. Stay safe. We'll make them regret underestimating you." Marjorie smiled, watching the city lights blur past the window. They thought her age made her weak. Her job made her worthless. Her race made her powerless. But she'd learned something in her 72 years. Truth was like water. It might take time, but it always found a way to break through. Paul Donovan's office was a monument to organized chaos. Dawn light filtered through dusty Venetian blinds, casting stripes across mountains of papers and worn file cabinets. The aging investigator hunched over his desk, his coffee long cold, eyes fixed on financial statements dating back 5 years. "Got you, you smug bastard," he muttered, circling another suspicious transaction with his red pen. The paper trail was like a spider's web, complex, sticky, and designed to trap the unwary. But Donovan had been hunting corrupt executives for 4 decades. He knew where to look. His desk lamp illuminated spreadsheets showing pension funds mysteriously rerouted through shell companies. Employee retirement accounts drained dry, the money vanishing into offshore accounts. Fake vendors billing millions for services never rendered. All roads led back to Arthur Bennett. Donovan's arthritic fingers typed another entry into his laptop. The screen showed a complex flowchart of transactions, each box representing another layer of Bennett's deception. The pattern was clear. Bennett had been systematically stealing from his own workers for years. Clever system, Donovan said to himself, rubbing his tired eyes. Take a little from thousands of accounts. Spread it thin enough that no one notices. He'd seen similar schemes before, but never this sophisticated. The evidence was damning. Bennett had created a network of fake companies, each one existing only on paper. Money flowed through them like water through a sieve, eventually ending up in untraceable accounts. But Bennett had made one crucial mistake. He'd gotten sloppy with the dates. Donovan pulled up another document, this one showing maintenance contracts for equipment that didn't exist. The dates overlapped with legitimate contracts, double billing the company for millions. It was the kind of detail that most auditors would miss, but Donovan had learned to spot these patterns during his years with the FBI. His phone buzzed, Michael Williams texting to confirm their meeting. Donovan looked at his watch, 6:45 a.m. He'd been at this all night. Better make copies, he muttered, gathering the most important documents. His old printer wheezed to life, slowly producing duplicates of bank statements, contracts, and internal memos. Each page was another nail in Bennett's coffin. The sun was fully up by the time Donovan finished organizing the evidence into 3 manila folders. One for Michael, one for the FBI, and one for his own records. Always have backups. That lesson had saved his life more than once. He locked the originals in his fireproof safe, tucking the 2 copies into his worn leather briefcase. The handle was cracked, the corners scuffed, but it had served him well through countless investigations. His office window overlooked the parking lot where his old Buick waited. Nothing flashy. Donovan believed in staying invisible. The car had seen better days, but like him, it got the job done. The morning air was crisp as he walked to his car. A few early workers hurried past, clutching coffee cups, minds already on their day ahead. None of them noticed the old man with the briefcase. That's how Donovan liked it. He checked his mirrors before pulling out of the lot. Old habits die hard. The streets were starting to fill with morning traffic as he headed toward Michael's foundation office downtown. At a red light, Donovan glanced at the briefcase on his passenger seat. Those documents would destroy Bennett's carefully constructed facade. Proof of every crime, every stolen dollar, every life ruined by corporate greed. The light turned green. Donovan accelerated, mentally rehearsing how he'd present the evidence to Michael. Start with the pension fraud. That would hit hardest. Then show the pattern of fake vendors, the money trails. Movement in his rear-view mirror caught his eye. A black SUV, windows tinted dark, moving faster than the morning traffic warranted. Donovan's instincts, honed by years of close calls, screamed danger. He changed lanes, watching the SUV match his move. No coincidence. His heart rate picked up, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. The next intersection was coming up. He'd turn right, see if they followed. The SUV accelerated suddenly, closing the gap. Donovan saw the driver's intention too late. The impact came from behind, hard enough to throw him forward against his seatbelt. His Buick spun, tires screaming on asphalt. Time slowed. Donovan saw the concrete barrier approaching, felt the second impact as the SUV struck his side. Metal crunched, glass shattered. The world turned upside down as his car rolled. The final impact brought darkness. When consciousness returned, Donovan tasted blood. Smoke filled his lungs. Through cracked glasses, he saw flames licking at his hood. His door was jammed. The briefcase. Where was the briefcase? Flames were spreading fast. Pain shot through his right leg as he tried to move. Somewhere, sirens wailed. The fire was inside the car now, hungry flames devouring leather and paper. Donovan watched helplessly as the briefcase caught fire, decades of investigative instincts screaming at him to save the evidence. But survival came first. He kicked at his window with his good leg, glass finally giving way. Fresh air rushed in as he dragged himself out, collapsing on the pavement. The black SUV was gone, leaving only skid marks and questions. Donovan lay on his back, watching his car burn. Years of evidence going up in smoke. He could hear people shouting, running to help. But his eyes stayed fixed on the flames, knowing Bennett's secrets were burning with them. Paul Donovan lay in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily beside him. His right leg was elevated, wrapped in a thick cast, and his face bore cuts from shattered glass. Despite the pain medication flowing through his IV, his mind remained sharp. Michael Williams sat in the visitor's chair, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks of worry. "The police are calling it a hit and run," Michael said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Donovan let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Hit and planned is more like it. Bennett's got people everywhere, including federal agencies. That's what I found out last night." Michael leaned forward, his expression intense. "What do you mean? Those financial records I was bringing you?" Donovan adjusted himself carefully in the bed. "They showed more than just theft. Bennett's been paying off FBI agents, SEC investigators, even judges. That's how he's stayed clean all these years." "Do you have copies somewhere safe?" Michael asked. Donovan's face darkened. "Most of it burned in the car. But," he lowered his voice, glancing at the door, "I backed everything up on a server, hidden where Bennett would never think to look." "Where?" "The janitorial wing, bottom floor, behind the supply closet. There's an old server room they stopped using years ago. I figured it was the perfect spot. Who pays attention to the cleaning staff?" Donovan managed a small smile. "Your mother taught me that lesson. The invisible ones see everything." Michael's phone buzzed. His face hardened as he read the news alert. "Bennett's making his move. He's holding a press conference right now." They turned to the small TV mounted on the wall. Arthur Bennett stood at a podium, his usual polished appearance slightly disheveled, playing the role of a wronged man. "These allegations against me are not just false. They're maliciously fabricated," Bennett declared, his voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Mr. Williams and his foundation have orchestrated a smear campaign, including doctored surveillance footage of a supposed confrontation with an employee." Michael's hands clenched into fists as Bennett continued. "We have evidence that the surveillance footage was digitally altered. Experts will confirm this was a calculated attempt to destroy my reputation and seize control of Bennett Industries through deception." Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. Bennett raised his hands, playing the victim perfectly. "I've devoted my life to this company, to creating jobs and opportunities. To have my character assassinated by opportunists who manipulate the media with fake evidence." Bennett paused, wiping his eyes. "It's devastating." Michael muted the TV, his jaw tight. "He's trying to get ahead of the story. Turn public opinion against us before we can expose him." "Classic Bennett move," Donovan said. "He's always been good at playing the victim while he's actually the predator." A nurse entered to check Donovan's vitals, forcing them to pause their conversation. After she left, Donovan spoke more quietly. "Listen, that server has everything. Financial records, emails, recorded conversations, enough to prove he's lying about the surveillance footage and everything else. But you have to get to it fast. Bennett's people will be searching too. How do I access it? IP address is written in my notepad, the one in my briefcase." Donovan stopped, remembering. Damn! It burned with everything else. Michael ran a hand over his face, frustration evident. So, we're back to square one. Not quite. Your mother, she knows that wing better than anyone. The server's behind a panel marked electrical maintenance. She might recognize it. The heart monitor's steady beeping filled the silence as Michael considered this. It's too dangerous to involve her again. Bennett's already targeted her once. Sometimes the best hiding place is right in the open, Donovan said. Bennett's too arrogant to think a janitor could threaten him. That's his weakness. He underestimates people he considers beneath him. Michael's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen, his expression changing. What is it? Donovan asked. Anonymous text, Michael said, showing him the message. He hid the backup where no one looks. Where she cleans. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as Marjorie and Michael made their way through Bennett Industries' empty hallways. It was 11:30 p.m., and the building was almost deserted except for the night security guards making their rounds. Marjorie wore her spare cleaning uniform, and Michael had borrowed one from her friend Jerome, who worked the day shift. They pushed their cleaning carts deliberately, mimicking the unhurried pace of people who did this job every night. Just act natural, Marjorie whispered, demonstrating how to grip the mop. Let your shoulders slump a little. Nobody looks twice at cleaners. Michael adjusted his posture, trying to become invisible like his mother had learned to be. They passed a security guard who barely glanced their way. Marjorie gave him a quiet, evening, with the perfect tone of someone who belonged there. When they reached the service elevator, Marjorie swiped her backup keycard. The doors opened with a soft ding. Bottom floor, she said. That's where they keep all the old equipment nobody wants anymore. The basement level was darker, lit only by emergency lights that cast long shadows. Their footsteps echoed despite their attempts to move quietly. The air smelled of cleaning supplies and musty concrete. There, Marjorie pointed to a door marked Janitorial Storage B7. I've cleaned this floor for 15 years, but I've never seen anyone use that room except for storage. Michael tried the handle. Locked. He pulled out the master key Jerome had lent them and opened the door slowly. The room was cramped, filled with shelves of cleaning supplies and broken equipment. Marjorie moved purposefully to the back wall, running her hands along the panels. Here, she said, finding one marked Electrical Maintenance. Help me move this shelf. They carefully slid the metal shelving unit away from the wall. Behind it, the panel was secured with 4 screws. Michael used a multi-tool to remove them, revealing a hidden alcove. Inside sat an old server, its lights blinking steadily. A small fan hummed, keeping it cool. Beside it was a stack of external hard drives, each labeled with dates going back years. Smart, Michael whispered. Hide it where the powerful people never look, among the invisible ones. He connected his laptop to the server using the cable Donovan had specified. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, following the instructions they'd received via encrypted message. Marjorie stood watch at the door, her heart pounding. Every distant sound made her tense. Got it, Michael said after several tense minutes. Downloading now. The progress bar crawled across his screen. 15%, 27%, 36%. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Marjorie closed the door most of the way, leaving just a crack. She grabbed a mop and bucket, positioning herself to look busy if anyone passed. The steps grew closer. A beam from a flashlight swept the corridor. Just keep mopping, Michael whispered, his eyes fixed on the progress bar. 58%, 64%. The security guard paused outside their door. Marjorie hummed softly, the way she always did while working. She dipped her mop in the bucket, wrung it out, and swept it across the floor in practiced motions. The guard moved on. Marjorie released her breath slowly. 73%, 82%, 91%. Almost there, Michael said. the final files copied over. He quickly disconnected everything, making sure to leave no trace of their presence. They carefully replaced the panel, moved the shelf back, and gathered their cleaning supplies. Michael's laptop, containing gigabytes of damning evidence, sat innocently in his cleaning cart beneath some rags. In the elevator riding up, Marjorie's hands trembled slightly. "Let me see what we found," she whispered. Michael opened his laptop just enough to play one video file. The footage showed Arthur Bennett in the conference room, passing a briefcase to a man whose face was clearly visible. A federal judge who had dismissed 3 lawsuits against Bennett Industries last year. "I own this city," Bennett's voice came through clearly. "Anyone who threatens what I've built will be destroyed. Your friend Williams? He's about to learn what happens when you cross me. Him and his mother both." Marjorie's face hardened at the threat. "Let's make sure everyone sees this." They exited through the loading dock, where Jerome was waiting in his car. Michael immediately opened his laptop and began uploading the files through a secure connection. "Sending to every major news outlet," he said, fingers flying over the keys. "And whistleblower sites. Once it's out there, Bennett can't stop it." The uploads completed one by one. CNN, MSNBC, Reuters, ProPublica, The Washington Post. Each confirmation brought a small smile to Marjorie's face. "It's done," Michael said finally. "By morning, everyone will know who Arthur Bennett really is." Jerome drove them home through the quiet streets. In the back seat, Marjorie held Michael's hand tightly, both of them silent but filled with the knowledge that after tonight, nothing would be the same. The truth was out there now, spreading across the internet like wildfire. Arthur Bennett's carefully constructed world of privilege and corruption was about to come crashing down, brought low by the very people he had considered beneath his notice. The morning sun had barely risen when Marjorie's phone started buzzing non-stop. She sat at her small kitchen table, watching the news unfold on her old TV, while Michael paced behind her, fielding endless calls. Breaking news: Bennett Industries CEO caught in massive corruption scandal. The CNN headline blazed across the screen. The footage they'd recovered played in clips. Arthur Bennett handing over briefcases, making threats, orchestrating payoffs. "Look at his face," Marjorie said quietly, watching Arthur's rage-filled expression as he threatened her and Michael on camera. All that hatred, right there for everyone to see. Michael's phone rang again. "That's the 5th reporter this hour," he said, declining the call. "They all want interviews." The coverage seemed overwhelming at first. Every major network ran the story. Social media exploded with clips and screenshots. Bennett corruption and justice for Marjorie were trending nationwide. But by mid-morning, the tide began to turn. "Breaking audio recording reveals activist Michael Williams threatening violence," flashed a new headline. Marjorie's heart sank as she heard what seemed to be Michael's voice. "We'll burn it all down. Bennett, his company, everything, whatever it takes." "That's not real," Michael said immediately, his face tight with anger. "They doctored that. I never said those things." More stories appeared rapidly. Arthur's PR team worked with military precision, flooding every channel with their counter-narrative. They released documents showing Michael's juvenile record, arrests from when he was 16, long since expunged. "Troubled past of anti-corporate crusader exposed," read one headline. "Williams, from street criminal to corporate saboteur?" Marjorie watched her son's face grow darker with each new attack. His phone kept ringing, now with calls from worried supporters and board members pulling their funding from his foundation. "They're trying to make you look violent," Marjorie said, reaching for his hand. "Just like they always do to our people when we speak up." The TV switched to live coverage outside Bennett Industries. Arthur Bennett stood at a podium, looking polished and wounded in an expensive suit. I am deeply saddened by this coordinated attack on our company, he said smoothly. The doctored videos released by Mr. Williams are a desperate attempt to destroy what thousands of hard-working employees have built. I have filed a $100 million defamation lawsuit this morning. He paused, his face a mask of concern. Moreover, I worry about Mr. Williams's state of mind. His criminal history and these threats of violence suggest someone who needs help, not someone we should trust with serious accusations. Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Hart. Emergency board meeting in progress. Arthur's lawyers claiming temporary reinstatement due to procedural violation in initial removal. I'm trying to hold the line. Marjorie's landline started ringing. She answered before realizing her mistake. You and your son are dead, a voice hissed, before hanging up. Michael took the phone from her shaking hands. We'll get caller ID installed, he said, and security cameras. More calls came, more threats. Their social media accounts flooded with racist messages and death threats. Local news vans parked outside their apartment building. Around noon, their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked frantically on their door. You need to see this, she said. They followed her downstairs. The building's brick wall had been spray-painted overnight. Fraud, in huge red letters. Marjorie stared at the graffiti, remembering Arthur's words from that first night. A relic, mopping floors, with a slave's hands. Now here was more hatred, painted right on her home. I'll call someone to clean it, Michael said, but his voice shook slightly. Back in their apartment, they watched Arthur's influence spread like poison. Conservative news channels ran endless segments questioning Michael's credibility. Social media influencers suggested Marjorie was being manipulated by her criminal son. Victoria called again. I'm sorry, she said. The board voted to temporarily reinstate Arthur pending a full investigation of the new allegations. He'll be back in charge by tomorrow morning. Michael slammed his hand against the wall. How? He demanded. We have him on video breaking the law. His lawyers are claiming the videos are inadmissible due to illegal access of company property. They're painting you as a violent activist who planted fake evidence. Marjorie sat quietly through it all, watching the world she thought they'd finally fixed start to crumble again. Her phone kept buzzing with unknown numbers. Every time she looked out the window, she saw people pointing at their building, taking pictures. Maybe we should stay somewhere else tonight, Michael suggested, looking at the growing crowd outside. But Marjorie shook her head. This is my home, she said firmly. I won't let him make me run and hide. She walked to her bedroom and came back with her Bible, the one where she'd hidden Samuel's note before it was stolen. She opened it to a worn page and read aloud, For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Michael sat beside her, his shoulders heavy with the weight of Arthur's counterattack. Outside, another news van pulled up. His phone buzzed with more threats and accusations. We told the truth, Marjorie said, taking his hand. That's what matters. The truth always finds its way out. But as they sat there, watching Arthur Bennett masterfully spin their evidence into a story of corporate sabotage and violent activism, they both wondered if the truth would be enough this time. The evening shadows stretched long across Marjorie's living room floor. She sat in her favorite armchair, too tired to even turn on the lights. Michael had finally gone home to check on his own place after the threats they'd received. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Mrs. Williams?" a quiet voice called. "It's Samuel Green." "Please, I need to speak with you." Marjorie approached cautiously, remembering the mysterious man from that first night. Through the peephole, she saw him standing there, thinner now, almost gaunt, but wearing the same expensive suit. "Why should I trust you?" she called through the door. "Because I'm dying," he answered simply. "And because Arthur Bennett is my brother." Marjorie's hand froze on the chain lock. After a moment's hesitation, she opened the door. Samuel Green looked worse up close. His skin had a sickly yellow tinge, and his suit hung loose on his frame. He carried a small leather briefcase. "May I sit?" he asked. "The treatments make me weak." Marjorie gestured to the couch, turning on a lamp. The soft light revealed deep shadows under Samuel's eyes. "Cancer," he said, noticing her look. "Stage 4. The doctors give me weeks, maybe months." He placed the briefcase carefully on the coffee table. "But that's not why I'm here." "You're Arthur's brother?" Marjorie asked, settling back in her chair. Samuel nodded slowly. "Half-brother, technically. Same mother." He pulled out a worn photograph from his jacket pocket. "This is her, Sarah Green." Marjorie took the photo. It showed a beautiful black woman in a nurse's uniform standing proudly in front of a small house. "Our mother," Samuel continued, his voice thick with emotion. "She worked 3 jobs to support us. Arthur was the older one, lighter-skinned, like our father. He could pass for white." Marjorie studied the photo more closely. "She looks kind," she said softly. "She was. Too kind, maybe." When Arthur got accepted to an elite prep school, she agreed to stay away. His father, our father, said it would be better for Arthur's future if no one knew about his black mother. Samuel's hands trembled slightly. "She died last year. Alone in a nursing home Arthur never visited." "And you?" Marjorie asked. "I was the darker son, the one who couldn't pass." Samuel's laugh was bitter. "Arthur's father paid my mother to take me and disappear. But he made sure I got an education, got into the company. His guilt, I suppose. As long as I stayed quiet about our connection, I had a place." Marjorie remembered Arthur's rage when he'd seen her that night, the way he'd called her slave hands. "All that hatred," she murmured. "He hates himself," Samuel said. "Every time he sees someone like you, like our mother, it reminds him of what he's buried, who he really is." He coughed, a rough, rattling sound. "I kept his secret for decades, watched him crush people like us, people like our mother. My silence bought me comfort, while others suffered." He opened the briefcase with shaking hands. Inside was a single hard drive, labeled "The Blood Truth." "Everything's here," Samuel said. "Birth certificates, DNA tests, photos, financial records showing how he paid to erase his past. And more. Every corrupt deal, every threat, every crime I witnessed over 30 years. He pushed the briefcase toward her. "I'm not long for this world, Mrs. Williams, but I want to die clean." Marjorie looked at the hard drive, then at the photo of Sarah Green. "Why me?" "Because you remind me of her. The same dignity, the same strength." Samuel stood slowly, steadying himself on the arm of the couch. "And because Arthur's greatest fear isn't losing his money or his power. It's the world knowing who he really is. The son of a black mother he erased." He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "I watched him humiliate you that night. Watched him try to destroy your son, just like he's destroyed so many others." He turned back to face her. "Our mother died, thinking her eldest son was ashamed of her. She was right." Marjorie picked up the hard drive, feeling its weight in her hands. "This will destroy him." "No," Samuel corrected. "His own hatred destroyed him long ago. This will just let the world see it." He moved toward the door, each step careful and measured. "Everything you need is there. Bank records, emails, photos, the truth about our mother, and about every crime he committed to keep his secret." At the door, he paused. "Mrs. Williams? Yes? When this comes out, and it will, tell them Sarah Green was a good woman. Tell them she deserved better than a son who denied her." Marjorie clutched the hard drive, thinking of her own son who had never denied her, who fought for justice no matter the cost. "I'll make sure they know," she promised. Samuel nodded once, then slipped out into the night, leaving Marjorie alone with the truth about Arthur Bennett's blood, and the power to expose it to the world. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in Michael's downtown office as his team worked frantically to prepare for the press conference. Laptops cluttered every surface, screens displaying damning evidence from Samuel's hard drive. "Look at this," Michael said, gesturing to his monitor. His media director leaned in, eyes widening at the birth certificate clearly showing Arthur Bennett's mother as Sarah Green, with race listed as Negro in the stark language of that era. Marjorie sat quietly in the corner, Samuel's photo of Sarah Green in her lap. She traced the woman's face with a gentle finger, seeing echoes of Arthur in her features, the same high cheekbones, the same determined set of the jaw. "We've got yearbook photos," called out Jenny, Michael's lead researcher. "Arthur's progression through prep school. Watch how his appearance changes." She clicked through images showing a young Arthur, his features becoming more deliberately white-presenting with each passing year. Michael's phone buzzed. "Victoria," he answered, putting it on speaker. "The network's confirmed." Victoria's crisp voice filled the room. "They're giving us a primetime slot tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, live broadcast." "That fast?" Michael asked. "The footage of Arthur's private security threatening minority employees is too explosive to sit on," Victoria replied. "And the financial records Samuel preserved. Michael, he was systematically targeting minority-owned contractors, driving them into bankruptcy, then buying them for pennies." Marjorie spoke up from her corner. "Just like his daddy taught him, erase what you hate, then profit from its destruction." The room fell quiet. Even Victoria seemed to pause on the other end of the line. "Mom," Michael said gently, "you don't have to be there tonight. We can handle—" "I'm presenting it," Marjorie interrupted, her voice firm. "Sarah Green's story needs to be told by someone who understands, someone who's lived invisible." Before Michael could respond, his security chief burst through the door. "We've got trouble. Arthur's hired a private security firm, ex-military types. They're positioning vehicles along every route to the network studio." "He knows," Michael muttered. "Somehow he knows about the drive." Victoria's voice crackled through the speaker. "Already handled. I've coordinated with federal agents who've been building a case against Arthur's financial crimes. They'll provide escort and air support." "Air support?" Jenny asked. "Helicopter surveillance," Victoria explained. "Arthur's not the only one with connections. The FBI's been waiting for something this solid. They'll make sure we reach the studio." Michael's team scrambled to organize their evidence into clear presentation segments. Photos were arranged, documents scanned, video clips edited for maximum impact. Through it all, Marjorie sat quietly, preparing herself. "Latest intel," the security chief reported an hour later. 3 black SUVs stationed at major intersections. They've got communications gear, probably coordinating to box us in once we move. Michael paced, his usual calm demeanor showing cracks. "We need multiple vehicles. Decoys." "No," Marjorie said, standing. "No games, no hiding." She smoothed her simple blue dress. "We go straight there. Let them see us coming." "Mrs. Williams," the security chief started to protest. "Arthur spent his whole life running from who he is," Marjorie continued, "running from his mother's face in the mirror. I won't run. Not from him, not from his hired guns." Michael studied his mother's face, seeing the same quiet strength that had sustained her through decades of cleaning other people's offices while holding her head high. "The federal escort will be in place by 7, Victoria confirmed. "Unmarked vehicles, but heavily armed agents, and I've arranged for a live feed from the moment you leave the office. If Arthur's men try anything, it'll be captured in real time." Jenny finished loading the presentation onto encrypted drives. Multiple backups, all ready to go. Even if they stop one car, the others will have copies. Marjorie picked up Sarah Green's photo. Michael, help me write my introduction. The people need to understand what this is really about. What do you mean? Michael asked. This isn't just about Arthur's crimes, Marjorie explained. It's about the poison of self-hatred. About a man so ashamed of his mother's blood that he built an empire on crushing people who reminded him of her. She touched the photo gently. Sarah Green's son spent his life becoming what destroyed her. The world needs to understand that kind of hatred never brings peace. The team gathered around her, listening as she dictated the words she would speak to millions. Outside, the sun began to set over the city. In less than 2 hours, they would make their move, protected by federal agents against Arthur's private army. Michael watched his mother's face as she refined her statement, seeing not the janitor Arthur had humiliated, but a woman of unshakable dignity, preparing to speak truth to power. She had spent her life cleaning up other people's messes. Tonight, she would expose the mess of hatred and denial that had corrupted Arthur Bennett's soul. The security chief's radio crackled with updates about Arthur's men taking positions. Victoria's phone lit up with confirmation of federal support. But Marjorie remained calm, holding Sarah Green's photo like a shield, ready to tell her story. And through it, expose the truth about the man who had tried to bury his own mother's memory. The studio lights blazed hot as Marjorie Williams stepped onto the stage, her sensible shoes silent against the polished floor. Hundreds of faces stared back from the audience, and millions more watched through cameras. Her blue dress, pressed carefully that morning, felt like armor. She approached the podium slowly, placing Sarah Green's photo beside the microphone. The picture faced the audience. A proud black woman in a simple dress, her eyes holding the same quiet dignity Marjorie carried now. "Good evening," Marjorie began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My name is Marjorie Williams. I've spent 15 years cleaning offices at Bennett Industries. Invisible work, some might say. But there's no such thing as invisible people, only those who choose not to see." The audience sat silent, captivated by her calm presence. "Last week, Arthur Bennett saw me, really saw me, for the first time in decades. And his reaction?" She paused, letting the weight settle. "He called me, and I quote, a relic mopping floors with a slave's hands." A collective intake of breath from the crowd. In the wings, Michael watched proudly as his mother continued. But this isn't about one man's cruel words. This is about a deeper pain, the kind that makes someone hate what they see in the mirror so much that they try to destroy it wherever they find it. Samuel Green emerged from stage left, walking slowly to join her. His illness showed in his careful steps, but determination burned in his eyes. "This is Samuel Green," Marjorie introduced him. "And he has a story about another invisible woman, his mother, Sarah Green." Samuel adjusted his glasses, leaning toward the microphone. "Sarah Green was my mother," he began, "and Arthur Bennett's mother, too." The audience erupted in murmurs. Camera flashes intensified. "Arthur and I share the same mother. A kind, hard-working black woman who cleaned houses to support her sons. But while I embraced who I was, Arthur chose a different path." Samuel's voice cracked slightly. "He used his lighter skin to pass as white, erased all traces of our mother, and built an empire on destroying people who reminded him of where he came from." Screens behind them filled with documents, birth certificates, school records, family photos showing a young Arthur's gradual transformation. Then came the financial records, decades of systematic discrimination, targeted destruction of minority-owned businesses, illegal offshore accounts. But Arthur didn't stop at denial. Samuel continued. When threatened with exposure, he turned to violence. He gestured to the back of the auditorium, where Paul Donovan, still bearing injuries from his car crash, stood up. This man survived an attempted murder orchestrated by Arthur Bennett. Suddenly, commotion erupted near the emergency exit. Arthur Bennett himself burst through the doors, flanked by private security. His face contorted with rage as he saw his mother's photo displayed for all to see. "You lying!" he began to shout, but his words were drowned out by the sound of federal agents flooding in from every entrance. "Arthur Bennett," a lead agent announced, voice carrying through the stunned audience, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and witness intimidation." Arthur tried to run, but agents caught him before he made it 3 steps. As they cuffed him, his carefully maintained facade cracked completely. "You can't do this to me!" he screamed, his voice rising hysterically. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Marjorie said quietly into the microphone, though everyone heard her. "We finally do know who you are. Sarah Green's son, running so hard from his mother's face that he became everything that ever hurt her." The audience rose to their feet as Arthur was led away, his expensive suit wrinkled, his dignity in tatters. Cameras followed his walk of shame while Samuel moved to stand beside Marjorie. "To every invisible person," Marjorie spoke again, her voice strong and clear, "to every one of you who's been told you don't matter, look at this moment. Truth doesn't stay buried forever. Dignity can't be stripped away if you hold it in your heart." Michael joined them on stage as the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. He wrapped his arms around his mother, tears streaming freely down his face. Marjorie held him tight, her own eyes glistening but her head held high. Through the viewfinder of the main camera, the final shot captured a powerful tableau. Marjorie Williams, standing tall between her son and Samuel Green, with Sarah Green's photo bearing witness to the moment justice finally arrived. Behind them, through the emergency exit's closing door, Arthur Bennett disappeared into custody, leaving behind an empire built on shame and finally exposed by truth. The applause continued, washing over them in waves. Marjorie closed her eyes briefly, feeling decades of silence finally break. In the end, it wasn't wealth or power that won. It was the quiet strength of those who refused to remain invisible. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor, where Marjorie Williams sat in the front row, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Michael sat beside her, his usual suit replaced by one she'd helped him pick specially for today. Arthur Bennett, once immaculate in $1,000 suits, now wore prison orange. His shoulders slumped as he sat at the defendant's table, his carefully maintained appearance showing cracks after a month in detention. The transformation was striking, his hair unkempt, his face drawn, his eyes darting nervously around the packed courtroom. Judge Maria Rodriguez adjusted her glasses, surveying the courtroom with stern attention. "In the matter of the United States versus Arthur Bennett, we are here for sentencing." Her voice carried authority that silenced even the restless reporters in the back rows. Paul Donovan wheeled himself to the witness stand, his legs still in a cast. The squeak of his wheelchair echoed in the hushed chamber. Though injured, his voice remained strong as he testified about the night his car was forced off the road. "I saw the SUV coming," Paul recounted, gripping the arms of his wheelchair. "Black, no plates. The same vehicle I'd noticed following me after I started investigating Mr. Bennett's offshore accounts." He paused, looking directly at Arthur. "The impact sent me through the guardrail. I remember thinking I was going to die." Arthur stared at the table, refusing to meet Paul's gaze. Victoria Hart, still chairwoman of Bennett Industries, took the stand next. The board was systematically deceived, she testified, her voice tight with controlled anger. Mr. Bennett created an elaborate network of shell companies to hide his illegal activities. When we began investigating discrepancies, he threatened board members' families. The evidence mounted: financial records, surveillance footage, witness testimonies. Samuel Green's deposition played on screens throughout the courtroom, his illness preventing him from attending in person. He detailed decades of Arthur's systematic discrimination, violence, and fraud. Finally, it was Marjorie's turn. She walked to the stand with quiet dignity, the same way she'd walked through Bennett Industries halls for 15 years. "I saw things over the years," she said simply. "Little cruelties, big cover-ups. But that night, when Mr. Bennett showed his true face," she looked at Arthur, not with hatred, but with something like pity. "He called me words that echoed from darker times, but what he really showed was his own pain. Pain he turned into poison." Judge Rodriguez called Arthur to stand for sentencing. He rose slowly, aged decades in just a month. "Arthur Bennett," the judge began, "this court finds your actions represent the worst kind of corporate corruption. You used your position not just for financial gain, but to actively harm those you saw as beneath you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your attempt to silence witnesses through violence shows you remain a danger to society." The sentence fell like a hammer. 45 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 30 years. Restitution of $200 million to be paid to victims of discrimination and fraud. Arthur swayed slightly, but remained silent as bailiffs approached. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, all Bennett Industries board members implicated in these crimes are ordered to resign immediately. The company will be placed under independent oversight for 5 years. Victoria Hart stood, addressing the court. "Your Honor, Bennett Industries has already begun restructuring. We've established a $50 million fund for minority employee education and advancement." She turned to face Marjorie directly. "And we would like to formally apologize to Mrs. Williams, whose dignity in the face of abuse helped expose this corruption." Cameras flashed as Victoria walked to Marjorie, extending her hand. "Mrs. Williams, on behalf of Bennett Industries, I apologize for the harassment and discrimination you endured. Your strength has changed our company forever." The moment aired live across national networks. Marjorie accepted the apology with characteristic grace, her simple "thank you" carrying more weight than any lengthy speech. As Arthur was led away, Michael received a tap on his shoulder. Senator James Marshall, chair of the Corporate Ethics Committee, whispered something in his ear. Michael's eyes widened slightly as the senator handed him a business card. Meanwhile, the president of the Urban Justice Coalition approached Marjorie with a crystal award. "Mrs. Williams," she announced, cameras rolling, "for your courage in confronting corporate corruption and inspiring a national conversation about workplace dignity, we present you with our annual Community Leadership Award." Marjorie held the award carefully, its facets catching the sunlight. She thought of all the nights she'd cleaned this very courthouse, invisible to the lawyers and judges hurrying past. Now her name would be engraved on its walls, not as someone who cleaned them, but as someone who helped ensure justice was truly served within them. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the impact of the day's events would ripple far beyond its walls. Bennett Industries would never be the same. Neither would corporate America, as new oversight legislation was already being drafted based on the case's findings. Warm spring sunshine bathed Marjorie's new backyard in golden light. The modest but beautiful single-story home in a quiet neighborhood was everything she'd never dared dream of owning. Garden boxes filled with sprouting vegetables lined the fence. Her retirement project, she'd decided. The smell of barbecue smoke drifted through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and conversation. James, her former co-worker from the night shift, stood at the grill wearing a Kiss the Cook apron over his janitor's uniform. He'd come straight from work to be here. "Miss Marjorie," he called out, flipping burgers with expert care. "These are almost ready." Marjorie sat in a comfortable patio chair, watching her guests with quiet joy. Dorothy and May, who'd worked alongside her for 20 years, chatted animatedly about their new positions as shift supervisors under Victoria Hart's reformed management. Their grandchildren played tag around the yard, their shrieks of delight making Marjorie's heart swell. "More lemonade, Mama?" Michael appeared at her side, pitcher in hand. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him in months. "Thank you, baby." She held out her glass, studying his face. The dark circles under his eyes were finally fading. The constant tension in his shoulders had eased. They were healing, both of them. Paul Donovan sat nearby, his leg cast now covered in colorful signatures from his kids. He was telling war stories to a group of wide-eyed teenagers, all children of former Bennett Industries workers who'd suffered under Arthur's regime. "And that's when your parents stood up and testified," he said. "Real heroes, every one of them." Victoria Hart arrived fashionably late, carrying a large covered dish. "My grandmother's peach cobbler recipe," she announced, "though I warn you, I'm not nearly the cook she was." The fact that the chairwoman of Bennett Industries now brought homemade desserts to a janitor's house party spoke volumes about how much had changed. Samuel Green's widow, Angela, sat with Marjorie's church friends, showing them photos of Samuel in his younger days. "He would have loved this," she said softly. All these people coming together, breaking bread, no more hiding. The doorbell chimed, and Marjorie's neighbor Mrs. Chen appeared with her famous dumplings. "For the woman who made our street famous," she teased. The local news had done a piece about Marjorie's new home, and tourists sometimes drove by slowly, hoping to catch a glimpse of the janitor who toppled a titan. As the sun began its slow descent, Michael clinked his glass for attention. The crowd quieted, gathering around the patio. He stood tall, his face glowing with purpose. "First," he began, "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my mother's new home. Your donations, your support, your love. It means everything." He paused, looking at Marjorie with pride. "But we're not just here to celebrate a house. We're here to announce something bigger." Victoria stepped forward, standing beside Michael. "Bennett Industries is proud to be the first major corporate partner in a new initiative," she announced. "One that will ensure what happened under Arthur Bennett never happens again." Michael nodded. "We're calling it Project Legacy. Starting next month, my foundation will partner with corporations nationwide to create comprehensive protections for elderly workers, especially those in service positions. No more invisible labor. No more silent suffering." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Marjorie sat straighter in her chair. "The project will provide legal aid, establish worker advocacy boards, and create educational programs about age discrimination and workplace dignity," Michael continued. "But most importantly, it will give voice to those who've been silenced." Dorothy wiped tears from her eyes. "About time," she whispered. "The first chapter of Project Legacy opens next week," Victoria added. "We're converting the old executive dining room at Bennett Industries into a worker advocacy center. And," she smiled at Marjorie, "we'd like Mrs. Williams to cut the ribbon." Applause erupted. James nearly dropped his spatula, cheering. The children stopped their games to clap, though they weren't quite sure why. Marjorie rose slowly from her chair, overwhelmed by emotion. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, casting long shadows across her new lawn. She looked at the faces around her. Friends, family, former co-workers, all changed by the events of recent months. Her gaze fell on her old cleaning uniform, framed and mounted on the patio wall, not as a reminder of shame, but as a symbol of dignity, of work done with pride and integrity. Beside it hung her Community Leadership Award, catching the last rays of sunlight. The cleaning cart that had been her constant companion for 15 years was gone, donated to the Smithsonian's new exhibit on labor rights. She no longer needed to hide in shadows or avert her eyes. She stood tall, her head high, her heart full. The children resumed their play, their laughter carrying across the yard. The adults returned to their conversations, planning and dreaming of changes to come. James announced the burgers were ready, and a line formed at the grill. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.